the Bouvier family, which was once an American aristocracy. By the time the Grey Gardens documentary came out, it had slipped mostly into middle class, except for Jackie and Lee, whose fortune came from marriage, not from the Bouvier family. Now, without going into too much detail, because I'm making a whole video documentary on the Bouvier family, the story starts with Michael Bouvier moving from France. He was a veteran of the Napoleonic Wars, to Philadelphia. He was a cabinet maker by trade, but would also import mahogany and marble, but mostly where he got his fortune in was selling firewood. He bought a large acreage of land, and on that land they also found vast deposits of coal. So he becomes a millionaire, building a huge mansion on the corner of Broad and Gerard Street and what is now LaSalle College. His youngest son, Michael Charles Bouvier, took his entire family to New York when he became a stockbroker on Wall Street. Now, Michael Charles Bouvier made a lot of money, never had children, but his brother, John Verneau Bouvier, had John Verneau III, which was the father of, Black Jack Bouvier, Bud Bouvier, Edith, Big Edie, and the twins, Maud and Michelle. Michelle, I called Margaret in another video, and I'll probably never hear the end of that. Now, by 1929, the brothers, Big Edie's brothers, Black Jack and Bud, were in fierce competition. Jack making his fortune on Wall Street, while Bud, the Texas oil fields. But Bud just was in such competition with his brother, it ripped his whole marriage apart, and he drank himself to death. Only 2 weeks later, Black Friday, the great stock market crash of 1929. Now, Michael Charles had a lot of cash reserves and good, strong bonds, which really saved them. But Jack lost a fortune. He lost a lot. And things were kind of touch and go until 1935, when Michael Charles dies, leaving his brokerage to Jack and his fortune to Jack and Big Edie's dad, Major John Verneau Bouvier III. Now, the bad thing about this, and where it starts to kind of fall apart, is Major really survived on principle, borrowed money. He would borrow and he would live off that, while his actual cash reserves were dwindling. Nobody really thought about it or saw it at the time. It was a price to be paid by his children and nieces and nephews. Now, during this time, Big Edie had already started breaking away from this kind of lifestyle. She was artistic. She did not have much interest in the Maidstone Club, which was a club right by Grey Gardens, and Lasada, which was a big mansion built by Major Bouvier. All his children, family had money, but by this time their own fortunes are dwindling, especially after the stock market crash. It was nowhere like it was before. And what they really tended to do was rely on marriage and other people. In fact, Jack had to depend on his father-in-law after the stock market crash, and had to move his wife and Jackie into a rent-free apartment provided by his father-in-law. And by 1935, of course, Phelan Bill had separated from Big Edie, and she was stuck in Grey Gardens, and she depended on a yearly stipend from her dad, Major, was at $3,500, which in today's money it's around $70,000 to $80,000. But when her son Bud Bouvier getting married, she arrived at the wedding very late, dressed to the nines, and her father had enough and cut her off. So we see what's happening in Grey Gardens, right? We see everything breaking apart, and we wonder why her family doesn't save them. Well, what was really going on is, instead of facing what was going on head on, these socialites, these American aristocrats, they were so used to being rich and above everybody that they were spending, they were marrying, they were throwing parties, they were doing anything but facing the fact that their fortune was dwindling, playing the part as if they were all rich and everything was okay. They married rich. That's what they looked for in husbands and wives, was wealth, because that's what they were used to. They didn't know any other way. So it's crumbling by Grey Gardens, and Jackie and Lee did pretty well through marriage. The Bouvier family nowadays is not ultra rich at all. They're like anybody else. Now, Vanderbilt's kind of fell apart. The name is still big, but you have the Rockefellers are still rich. It just goes to show how this kind of goes up and down, and some families keep their wealth, but greed, economic slumps, these kind of things can hit a family hard. And when you have these people that are so used to having things handed to them, well, they stop really learning how to make money. They can do it as long as they have a lot, but as it starts dwindling, they can't rebuild their fortunes unless luck, someone else, comes to save them.